welcome anyone who is here. Um, I want to try and make this. Um, I want to try and make this positive and constructive. I want to try and make this not painful. I don't want to make it painful for anyone. Um, I want to try and talk about difficult topics without. I want to talk about difficult topics without causing anyone to be feeling pain or discomfort. Um, so I want to talk about it in a positive light and somehow resolve unresolved unresolved trauma and unresolvable trauma. And this is something that has really affected me. There there is a big aspect to living through experiences that cause damage to you, that you have to somehow come to terms with it, and you have to somehow move on from it and live your life. And the difficult thing is that you are reminded of these events, whether they're singular or multiple events, or whether they're prolonged experiences. And everyone's trauma is different. One thing I think that there is a theme or a connection between what we all share is that there is a feeling of injustice, or a clear understanding that there has been an injustice, or there is an ongoing injustice. And sometimes there is resolution, and this can help the individual to move on. Sometimes there is active forms of reconciliation and forms of remorse from people who were involved that contributed to the trauma in the first place, that help to move on and to heal. And even if they're the smallest things, they can be massive to the individual. Even like the smallest thing could be just acknowledgement. Just acknowledgement in the smallest form can be a relief to the individual, because they've been living with this for so long, and then suddenly someone shows some form of understanding or compassion, and in that moment you might be able to see the pain that the other person has gone through, and their acknowledgement has allowed you to empathize with them, to understand that they too have had to live with this themselves. Um, Unfortunately, this doesn't occur when you have situations where um, you don't get that. And that happens in situations where there is a disconnection between the individual and the um, any persons who may have been aware of the situation and did nothing or could do nothing. And this goes from being someone who is an acquaintance to someone you know to someone who's a person of um, standing to a person who is in a role of responsibility. Uh, and it also applies to those who are the actual perpetrators themselves. So those who are responsible for the situation that caused this. And this is more related to um, I guess you could isolate this within certain aspects of certain types of trauma, but I think you could spread this out into being something that is shared across almost everyone who's experienced complex trauma. And it becomes complex in the sense that it is unresolved, that it is or unresolved or unresolvable. So when there is resolution, that is a path to healing. When there is acknowledgement, that is a path to healing. It doesn't make it any easier in the sense that you still have the pain and you might still have the associations and the um, ongoing fears. And these are things that probably aren't talked about enough. Is the aspect of fear, the aspect of distrust, and the aspect of prolonged agony or prolonged silence, or in its worst form, prolonged antagonization. And what I mean by that is where you have a guilty party that is aware that you're aware of their guilt, and they perpetuate your trauma through letting you know that they know that you know. And this can be done through many means. It can be done subtly and it can be done overtly. And in its extreme cases, it can be made in the form of threats. So when I talk about fear, this can be something that can really take that level of trauma that you've already experienced and are continually experiencing, and to exacerbate it to an extreme level because you don't have any respite from what you're going through. The other thing that this does is it multiplies or adds to the number of types of um, triggers that you may experience. So something that may have been relatively painful and traumatic, then as additional factors or aspects are added to that, it it takes something from one thing to multiple things. And so for the individual, you may get periods of time where you're free from a certain aspect, and then you're reminded of another aspect through this process, so that it exacerbates the situation. And so it then will keep you in a dissociated state or a state of fear in a more extreme case. And this happens to people throughout their lives. So it's not like this something, it's something that can happen later in life, but it can also be something that happens at the time as well. And this is the compounding factor that happens, especially for people who experience um, severe ongoing abuse, where um, they are kept held in a state of fear to speak about it, and they feel like there is no one to talk to. And if they do go to speak to someone, they get disregarded. If they do go to, and that could be someone, that could be an authority, or that could be someone that they trust. And this is where it returns back into that cycle of the knower and the knowing, and and both parties have got that. So the victim and the um, aggressor or perpetrator. And so that's becomes a form. There's a form of communication that goes on between, and depending on, generally the victim is isolated and doesn't have a support group, and often the perpetrator has backups or protections. So they resort to those systems to then act on the victim in order to further reinforce silence. And and this happens regardless of whether it's a child or an adolescent or an adult, or um, basically anyone, you know. And it all varies depending on the situation, but essentially the processes are very much the same. So what I want to try and talk about is how you can let go of this and try and live your life, because it's very difficult to actually do that when you're under this pressure. If you're reminded um, of this situation on a daily basis, then your daily life is being disrupted, and so you're stuck in this state of fear and frightened awareness. And what it's doing is compounding not only the effect of the trauma, but also um, a constant fear. So you have to then shut it out and then try and go about your daily life. This is very difficult, and this is why people have difficulties in functioning, because they're, you know, they might have daily routines, and it's completely disrupted by this continual thing that's there. And from the perspective of the perpetrator, or the the guilty party, is that they are obliged to keep this going. And what they do is they read the individual, they monitor the individual, and they act accordingly, because they don't want to be caught out with any of their things they're doing. So they have to be very subtle in their pressure that they apply. If it's the goal of the guilty party to destroy the individual, and they're first in tactics towards doing this, they will drive that person into self-sabotaging and self-destruction. So for the individual who is the victim, it's very important to stay strong and to not allow this to happen. And this is very difficult to do, because you have to just continue your daily life. And this is also separate to the other things that you should be doing as an individual living your life. You should be um, growing as a person. You should be living and enjoying life. You should be um, having active pursuits. You should have an active social life. And so I guess what I'm talking about is a period of time where um, it's after an event, or a prolonged period of time where there's been either um, something severe as a crime, or abuse, or there is a guilty party that is actively monitoring the victim and trying to cover their tracks, basically. So they'll be going through the process of being as much in the background as they can, but depending on um, what sort of power they wield depends on how much danger and fear will be inflicted on the individual. So this very same concept I'm talking about applies to someone who's say a witness to a major crime, or a victim of a major crime, or someone who's in a very closed, small, abusive situation. And it's very similar dynamics that are employed, and um, as the individual, it's hard enough to actually just function. And so this is what I'm talking about, is before the actual, before the person has survived this period of time. I'm talking about when they're stuck in it. And sometimes this period of time can actually extend out for a lifetime. And that is very dangerous for the individual, because they will go through um, various cycles of self-destruction as they can't cope with the pressure that's being applied to them, and the fear that they go through. So a way to counteract that is to be fearless. Know that, you know, know that if you're functioning and living your life, and you're not part of this fear cycle, is that, you know, if there is any chance of um, the victim or the individual to want to try and get justice, that pressure will be applied. So it's important for the individual to actually ignore the situation, but you can't actually do this forever, especially if there are, you know, I, people that actually go up against perpetrators of major crimes, um, and fight for justice, are very strong people that they have to actually suffer all this pressure and uh, um, additional trauma. So this additional trauma is what I was sort of talking about earlier, is that you're dealing with what you're processing what happened, and then you're processing that you're aware of the fact that they're aware that you're aware, and then you're also processing that there is additional elements being applied to you. And so usually in that situation, that's enough for the individual to shut down and give up. And so this is what happens in a lot of situations where they basically don't take it any further. And once the perpetrator is aware of this, they release the tension that they've been placing on the individual. But they keep monitoring the situation. And the thing is that if the individual is stuck in that, they can't get away, then um, they're trapped in a state of constant fear that they have the conscience of wanting justice, especially if it's morally. It's one thing to be wanting to fight for justice for yourself, but if you're also seeing that you're not the only victim, that there's other people who have suffered, then you have this additional moral obligation where you want to fight for the justice of other people who have gone through this situation. And so that's another layer of things that you have to deal with, you know. So you're functioning through the day, and you're living, and then um, you're having to deal with the ongoing threats or pressure. And what I'm trying to talk about this in a general thing, so it can be applied to any situation, and whether it's a small between only a few people or something that's very large. So it's hard for me to try and describe these things in such general terms, but got Quadrata's in the chat. How you going, brother? Um, so yeah, this is something that's very much personal to me, and I want to try and be very, I want to be positive about this, because I know that I do talk about stuff in such terms that Michaela's here as well. How you going, Michaela? Awesome to see you here. So, you know, for people that have got that courage, that where they fight for justice in a system where there is injustice, it takes a lot of courage, and they get a lot of as soon as they fight or open their mouth and speak to authorities, suddenly they get pushed back. And this authority could be within a family, it could be someone in the family. Within an institution, it could be someone who's responsible within the institution. If it's within um, a greater system, it could be a government or police scenario. So it's the same thing, regardless of whether it's a small thing or a bigger thing. And it's always the same thing. It's like you're wanting to speak out, but then you're being told to shut up. Or when you vocalize this injustice or crime, then you are persecuted yourself. And this is a dangerous thing in society, because it means that bad people get away with things. and it's the same thing, and it also happens in workplaces as well. You know, if you have a problem with someone and then you ask for um, resolution, and then it comes back on you that you're causing the problem, you know, or then um, as soon as you do it, you're isolated yourself, because a big factor in this whole thing is humans have an innate, or sorry, humans have a social behavior, and this is like within social dynamics where um, they are conflict avoidant. So justice is conflict, and like or speaking out against what is wrong. So if you are in a system that is corrupt and you're wanting to expose something, you are seen as the worst possible thing to this system, because you're causing a problem for what's going on. And we live in a world that is essentially corrupt in a lot of ways. So people who are whistleblowers go through a lot of trauma because their whole lives are turned upside down and exposed, and they're then isolated, and then they have to deal with the fact that um, they're the one that's causing the problem, even though all they're doing is exposing these horrible things that are going on. So I will go back to myself in this situation where, when I have spoken out about things, I've had it come back to me, and it's made me shut up. And um, it's very painful. You know, I've been, um, I try not to speak in, and I'm not going to speak in details, but like, because I'm fearful. This is what I spoke about in the beginning, is that there is fear that's put on the individual. So I have um, I've been a victim of a crime in um, adolescence that actually involved other people being harmed, and it was associated with a institution. And I tried to speak out about it, and I had pressure placed on me, and it drove me into paranoia. And I subsequently gave up on it. And yet I know for a fact that just within what happened in the experience that I went through, I know that one person ended their own lives. Several of these people ended up severe drug addicts. And I myself suffered a lot of pain and agony, and had my life irreversibly changed. Yet, um, to get any change within this system, it's almost impossible. And we went through a royal commission about this, and yet still nothing has really changed. And that and this plays on me a lot, because I feel like I've failed because I didn't go through with it. You know, I probably, if I was strong enough, I could have actually fought for justice, and I was scared of it. You know, Quadrata says, "Speaking the truth, brother, people, despite me, for no conform." It's, it is something that we all sort of share. Is that this exists everywhere and in all different forms. It's something that's sort of general, and that everyone experiences injustice, but the injustice itself can be just as much of the traumatic event than the actual events itself. And that you have these, you can break it up into stages. You can break it up into the thing that happened, going through, processing it, getting the courage to speak out, getting pressure put on you for speaking out, having nothing happen about it. So you then, lose faith in systems where there should be safeguards. And then you have the rest of your life, and so hopefully, it doesn't always end up like that, like that there are cases where there is, even if there isn't full justice, there's acknowledgement. And that's what happened with the Royal Commission that happened here in Australia just over 10 years ago, is that there was a lot of in acknowledgement, and things have changed in some ways. So things do get better over time, but I think overall, um, individually, these things still occur. So, I'll I'm really trying. I want to talk about something without being like talking in detail, but like, um, there was a um, separate to this other thing I was talking about earlier. Another thing happened to me. Um, was a situation where I was, um, assaulted and exposed to a heinous crime, and um, unjustly, um, treated, which resulted in an assault. And this situation had a party benefit by profiting off a large insurance claim that was made. And I was basically just pushed to the side and forgotten about. And yet at the same time, I, as an individual, was this was settled out of court, and it was like a payout, and I didn't get any help at all. I was pushed to the side. And so this party benefited from this situation that happened, this heinous crime. And lots of people knew about it, but they didn't know all the details. But this was a known thing, but it was a thing that was not spoken about. So it was somewhat covered up, and I was exposed to several aspects to it, and I then never got any help or treatment from it. And this other party benefited financially from it. And because so many people knew about it, they were aware of me. And so this created a lot of fear in me. And I knew that they weren't going to do anything to hurt me, but I still felt a fear about it. So I can't talk about it, and I'll never talk about it, but I can at least describe the scenario where, and this is something that happens very often with the murky area with crimes and insurance claims and keeping things quiet for preservation of reputations. And so there will be a victim that is pushed aside and is fearful. And this is why often victims or witnesses to crimes become very fearful, because they essentially are targets, because they feel like that they're going to have retribution if they speak out. And this is the same thing as if it's someone in a small relationship in a family unit, or whether it's like someone and an organization or a bigger. It's the same dynamics where it's fear and silence, and it takes a lot to actually get justice, and in some cases justice is impossible, and so this becomes an unresolvable thing. Curly's here saying hi everyone, just jumping in now, trying to catch up. Michaela says waiting for acknowledgement can waste your precious time. Those who lack empathy will never see what they did wrong. That's a really good comment. That's it. You got to live your life. You've got to keep living, and you got to keep doing things that can nourish you and allow you to function, and not expect that there's a lot in that, because waiting for acknowledgement is a waste of your precious time, because in a lot of cases you're not going to get it, and it's very difficult to accept. But this is just part of the system. is that um, the more um, the more um, damage that it's going to do, whether it's a company or an institution or a government, or um, or on a smaller scale, it can go down to um, individuals, but like I'm talking on getting justice for within systems that have got power. It's and bureaucracies, it becomes even more difficult, you know. And I've heard lots of cases where people fighting for justice within um, family violence, they ask for um, justice, but it's almost like it's denied there as well. And it's like almost like, within the system, they don't want to take responsibility for it. It's almost like they step back from it. And the same thing happens for these different levels of um, within society, of businesses, institutions, governments. um, and yeah, what you said there too, those who lack empathy will never see what they did wrong. That's absolutely right. In some cases it's done in some cases this stuff is done intentionally. And so, you know not only do they not see it as being wrong, they it's almost they see it as the thing they do. And that's the case for crime, basically. you know Major crimes where fraud and it's done intentionally. So they might know it's illegal, but they don't see it as being wrong. They see it as making money. And the same goes for malfeasance and neglect. Um, they see it as part of how they operate. So when they do get caught, they fight it without. It's like they don't have conscience over it. They don't see what they've done wrong. They have no empathy towards it because in a sense, they've already been acting in this way from the beginning. They had this intention to do wrong from the beginning or early on. So it's very difficult, and this is where it becomes traumatic for anyone trying to get justice in this situation. And I keep bringing back the parallels between the different levels of society, from the social and family groups to social groups to institutions and businesses, and then corporations, and then governments. They all have the same thing going on. And um, for the individual that is wanting to get justice, you know, there is a point where they either get some recognition or they get justice. And even when they get justice, often it's not like they're rejoicing over it, because they've gone through years of pain to get to that point, you know, and that pain is very complex. So they've gone through um, smear campaigns and being disregarded, and having sabotaged towards their career. You know, they might lose their job or be suspended. You know, um, like there's literally laws out there. I mean, look at Julian Assange as an example. You know, in prison for like 10 years or whatever, longer than 10 years. So we have whistleblower laws in Australia to try and shut people up since 2010, exactly. So he was in prison for 14 years. And self like, yeah, that's that like, if you think of an example, that's probably the most obvious example. And the thing is that this happens to this a whistleblower within a small company. You know, they get the same treatment. You know, Edward Snowden, same thing, exactly. You know, we had um, we have several whistleblowers in Australia that are in prison, and you know, I mean, it's good that Assange finally got freed and he's living his life now. Very private. He's not saying anything. He's just spending time with his family as he should. You know, just recovering. Um, but there's the the power that is wielded within certain institutions is um, is all about silencing individuals that are wanting justice, and it's set up that way. Yeah, that's it. He's been in prison. Oh no, oh no, Assange got freed this year. He's now living in Australia. He got That was only just recently, so you might have missed that. But he was in prison in like a high um, security prison with like serious psychopaths and like full on criminals in full on isolation. Really? That's strange. I don't know what's going on there. Siri might have it wrong, because it's like he finally, that was a big thing. He got released. Yeah, that's where Assange was. Maybe Siri's got it wrong. Siri doesn't get everything right. Um, it was That's really strange that's saying that, because you know he's back in Australia with his family now, but he's still in prison in the sense that he can't speak publicly and he can't be in public much. You know, um, like for instance, with Um, with this thing that happened when I was in adolescence, early adolescence, one of the perpetrators met with a severe death, and I often wonder whether he was taken out or whether it was fate, um, or whether it was his own conscience and he took himself out. So it was. I don't even know why I brought that up, but uh, something that I've always thought about, because this guy would have serious co- bad conscience on his playing on his mind for what he did. Yes, Michaela says, yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to see that he is free. Yeah, it is. It was. It. The thing is, it probably didn't make the newspapers because they didn't want to advertise it because it was such a political thing. So, um, Quadratus says, for 8 months, no hospital or doctor acknowledged the health problem post operation. But my father would live in last year of his life, extreme pain, delirium, hallucinations caused, and brain damage. That's horrible to hear that. I really feel for you. Like that's it. That's it. Like um, accountability in those situations is really difficult. Like um, that's another whole aspect of this whole thing is, you know, accountability and negligence, and inability to acknowledge fault. So the pain that suffered from that is excruciating, and you had to live through that, and you fought for it, and you had people telling you no. And I I have heard that this is something that is, he couldn't even recognize me at all the systems even had the courage to say anything. They didn't have the courage to say anything. Yeah, I feel for you, that brother. Like that's, like they have to face that themselves every day because they're like they make mistakes all the time because they're always making, like, they have successes and they have failures, but that doesn't make it any, like, it doesn't mean you need to be treated that way at all. You know what I mean? There needs to be um, systems where there's acknowledgement. That's all you needed, was acknowledgement to start with. It was just someone to sit down with you and say, look, we're really sorry that this happened, and that, it, because it may have been a risky procedure, but it doesn't mean like you need to be when you're disregarded and it's such a severe thing. It's like you're being put through this trauma of um, being disregarded and told, like it's like you're being gaslit, like that. No, there's nothing wrong here. What are you talking about? You know, and you're just trying to fight for justice, and they're saying there's nothing wrong. And at the same time, you're also dealing with the pain and agony of um, having to live with the fact that your own father can't even recognize you anymore, and he's lost functions of his brain and is dying. I mean, that's just such a horrible, painful story to hear. Quadrata says exactly. I just need that. I knew my father would have 30 years of life, but at least tell me it's not okay and he will die. That's it. Totally, brother, gaslighting. You know, it's amazing how much, that empathy would go a long way in that situation, for them to just sit down with you and say, look, you know, and they could also acknowledge the fact that they can't do anything at the same time. They could say, look, you know, but to turn it around and attack you, basically, it's like they attacked you on it. They disregarded you and ignored you, you know, and I mean, this is a big aspect to medical procedures, is that they are risky and that they can go either way. But they should not treat you that way when they don't go right. And especially if a procedure is meant to be safe and it turns out to be the opposite, like that's even worse, because you're going into it with some form of trust and faith, and then suddenly they don't care. It's like they don't care at all, and they're not even going to listen to you. Yeah, they wouldn't have been sorry. I'm really sorry that that happened to you and you had to live, and that was essentially your. you know there'd be a lot of pain and that you've still got with this, you know. So, and how do you come to terms with it, because it's something that's you never got resolution from it. And that's, I guess, what I'm talking about in with this, is not getting resolution for things. So Quadrata says the trick was that they suggested non-invasive surgery, but legally before the surgery they made him sign an agreement where they could do whatever they want. So they chose full open heart surgery. See, that's that sounds like malfeasance there, and entrapment. You know, imagine being like on a hospital bed and they go, "Here, sign this." You know, that means more equipment use, so more costly and more prestige for the hospital, and the doctors can practice. Yeah, no, don't be sorry for the venting. I was expecting and sort of hoping people to be able to um, open up tonight, and I'm glad that you did. And don't don't be sorry at all. Um, I mean, I'm happy to keep chatting for a little while longer. I think we've got more to talk about, but I need to go to the toilet. So if you can give me a minute, I'll go and then I'll be back. And because I think there is more to talk about, because this subject is something that there is so much to do it, and it covers so much. So if everyone's happy with giving me a few minutes. So yeah, um, lots to talk about. Like I mean, I wanted to talk about unresolved trauma and the pain of um, injustice, and I think the thing is something that's shared by most people that suffer complex trauma, is that injustice is a major part of it, and it happens in so many different forms. So um, I did the numbers on this guy that I was talking about. That um, he was connected to the this abuse that happened, um, connected in a higher level way, and his like I said, he met an untimely death, and I've wondered whether it was an intentional death, whether it was an accident. Like even if it was an accident, if it was a complete accident, that was just nature doing its thing, karma. Um, it could have been intentional, that he was it had basically gotten to the point where the damage that he'd done to so many people had caused for him to be taken out, or he could have basically had his own conscience get to him, and he did it himself. So it's something I've thought about in my thinking about. Either way, it wasn't justice because nothing ended up happening. I mean, he lost his life. There was, you know, his family sort of had to live with the shame of what he'd done in a way. Um, and there's the unknowing of essentially what happened. Um, and then you have the other aspect too, where people get justice in a sense where someone gets convicted and they go to jail and they still don't feel like they get justice because they've still had gone through all that pain of getting to that point. And then especially if the person doesn't have remorse, I think there is maybe some justice if the perpetrator goes through that process of remorse that can help in the healing. And there are therapies with that where um, victims get to meet their perpetrators in prison and confront them. And I had a similar situation myself where I got to say how much I was hurt, um, in an informal way. And I got to see the guilt on their face, and it didn't fix things overnight at all. But at least I got to see the remorse, and that's how I was, you know. I also got to empathize with one of them that they um, told me about how they had gone through their own loss, and I still don't really see that as enough to make me feel like anything changed for me. I did empathize in a way, but I not fully. So I think that's a thing, like where you almost get justice, and then it gets sort of stopped at a certain point right before you think you're going to get a healing, and then you're sort of trapped in that sort of thing, like it's never resolved. Quadrata says, "How was the experience?" Yeah, yeah, I think that's talking about like what I was just talking about. There was a sort of healing aspect to it, but it was not. In a sense, I got re-traumatized in that, and I got some healing from it, and I also got re-traumatized by it. In some ways, I did not see remorse. I saw some remorse, some guilt, but not complete, and or enough. And so it, I think that's what caused me to be stuck in that. Quadratus says, "Sorry to hear that, brother." I did get some remorse. I did get some healing from it, but to be fair, that was in a um, that was at a time in my life where all of these things were. It's like I had too many things I was dealing with, so and I think about this stuff every day, and I think about that like that. What I was talking about before. Michaela says it's really hard to accept that there are people who do not have any empathy. Um, there are narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths who walk among us. Absolutely. I think that's what we're dealing with, and I think that's a big factor to it. So, um, they literally don't have empathy, and in some cases, it's even in a perverse way. They feel a right to be doing what they're doing. Like they think it's okay to be doing what they're doing, or it's part of society, or part of them, you know, and that's really perverse and sick. And that's the psychopathy and the sociopathic aspect, that they literally can't see what they're doing wrong. Loratis says, "My big problem is that I know to be sensible, empathic person, and I can see the injustice everywhere, and something that started to happen after the death of my father is a deep feeling of vengeance." And that scares me a lot. Sort of distorted Joker complex. I I can see how that upsets you, and this is um, scares you, and that is something that happens, you know. So I understand what you're saying in both how it happened it happened as a result of what you went through. Um, and that it is scary too, because it's not you. You are an empathic person, and caring and loving and moralistic, and then suddenly this thing happens where you everything gets turned upside down. And maybe not suddenly, it happened over a period of time, so it gradually happened, and then at some point, and this is so. um Revenge is something that is scary and dangerous. So, um, Loratis continues, but I wouldn't do anything, by the way, haha. It's just desperate need for karma. But I see how this is so wrong by itself. Look, I understand and I can empathize. So, when I went through my life crisis, um, I, one of the motives for people to end their own lives is revenge, and I didn't realize at the time, but that's probably what was part of mine. And I had vandalized my car, and I spray painted on it the names of the abusers, their initials. One of them was the initials of the person who died in that horrible accident, um, almost 30 years ago. But he was a bad person. Like, he oversaw some horrible things. Um, and the other initials was the initials of another person who had abused and attacked me. And I spray painted their initials on my vehicle, and I punched this. I was in psychosis, basically, and I punched the windscreen, the as hard as I tried breaking my hand. I tried breaking my bones in my hand, punching it. So I tried breaking the glass, smashing the name. I did what you're saying. I'm only telling you this because you're saying how scared you were, and I went through this. So I punched each window 3 times as hard as I could, trying to break my hand, and it took 6 months for my hand to heal. And then I crashed my car, trying to end my life. And so it, this is what happens when you get pushed over the edge. You can't deal with it. And thankfully, I'm recovered. I'll never have a psychotic episode in my life again. B, I'll never go towards ending my own life again. I want to live, and I want to live a loving life. But that was essentially me trying to deal with something I couldn't deal with, and somehow trying to take revenge on these people that I couldn't um, take revenge on. Um, so I guess what I'm saying here is that do be careful, but this was something that I progressively became um, unwell, and I couldn't deal with it. And the biggest aspect to it was the fact that I could never get justice for this stuff. Um, and I felt like that. Um, Even though one of these people died in a horrific accident, you know, and I figured that that was the universe getting justice on this. I never still felt justice from it because I mean they honoured this guy with a plaque, like with a monument for him after the accident, and I can't even goes to show like that. It it pushed me over the edge. So like what you're saying there is it is scary, and I understand that, and I got pushed over the edge, and I ended up um, unwell. I couldn't deal with it um, purely because there was no way of getting justice, and as much as I was going to fight for it, it was fighting for other people as well. That um, he'd already died. So how can you get justice for someone who's already um, Preppy's here? How you going, Preppy? Found you again. Hard to keep up from Las Vegas. Sorry for interrupting. Preppy says, "Don't be sorry, Loretta's me. At least me. I show up to listen. Feel free to talk. Love this place. Found it 2 weeks ago. Helped myself so much. Just remembering, still here. Hi, Luke. Thanks again. You're a saint, Luke. You honestly have the light of the universe inside of you. Thank you so much." Loretta says, "Yeah, Preppy. Nice to meet you. So grateful to have met Luke and this small, amazing community." Preppy says, "Luke, you're a global hero." Oh, come on, don't say that. That's too much. How do we how do we get you what you deserve for helping us help each other? Well, just by doing that's enough for me. I'm getting so much from being able to share my stuff. Like tonight, I spoke about some really personal, deep stuff and I spoke about it in a way that's not going to have me in trouble. So I talked about some really serious, heavy stuff. You know, big stuff. We're talking notorious abuser that I did the numbers, and this person was responsible for, I don't even want to say the number, but like a lot of people being abused, and he died a horrible death. But these are things it's there was no justice. There was maybe justice in the fact that he, and like I said, in that's like what I said, there's three ways it could have gone. It was an accident, he got taken out, or he took himself out. But either way, it was. But there was no justice. Quadrata says, "Yeah, Preppy, nice to meet you. So grateful to meet Luke in this small, amazing community." Preppy says, "Yeah, Luke, you're a global hero." I know you already read that. Oh, look, that's too much saying that. But like, I'm just thank you. It's I'm not trying to say. I'm just humble, and I'm still working through some major problems. We've got a lot of work to do, and I'm conscious of, like, I talk about this stuff, like I talk about pain and trauma, and I try not to upset people, but like tonight I was talking about some heavy stuff, and I tried to talk about it in a constructive way where I talked about the pain of injustice, where when you fight, when you try and fight for, when you air your voice and no one listens, or then you have to then deal with the ramifications of being the disruptive element that's causing harm to the collective, because you're causing shame on the collective for what they're doing. You then become a target, and then so, and this happens on all scales of society, from very small groups up into the whole, like large scale stuff. Preppy says, "Don't be so humble as not to realize what has happened. I've never had a place this. This is it. I found it. Someone actually listens here without judgment. Never found that before this ever, Luke. Thank you." Michaela says, "You're not causing the shame. You're focusing them to acknowledge or take ownership of their own." That's a really good comment, Michaela. That's exactly it. I think there's so much in that. Like, so the shame, they already own the shame themselves, and they're expressing that shame through their actions. And that's why, that, like, it's like their guilt and their shame is why they act back and they're aggressive towards you, and when you're forcing them to acknowledge or take ownership of their own, you know. So it's like you're holding up a mirror essentially to them, and they can't take it because they see their ugliness in the mirror of and um, their own guilt and shame. Curly says agreed. That's it. Michaela says you hold a mirror to their bullshit. That's awesome. Quadrata says yes. Michaela says that's uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. That's it. That's awesome. That's courage right there. Preppy says yes, Michaela. That's it. Totally. Michaela's on the money there. She's got it perfect. Like, um, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for yourself and it's uncomfortable for them. They can't deal with it, you know? And this is where I think healing can happen on a really large scale. And this is something that, you know, like, take for instance some extreme examples. Like, we're talking extreme examples. Like, say, warring tribes or civil war, where you've got people killing each other, and you they need to come back together and reconcile, because they're all brothers and sisters, you know, and related. And um, how did it's uncomfortable, but they have to actually face the fact that they both parties have been part of this, but it was the fact that within both parties, it was the ones who were actually showing the mirror that brought the actual conflict to stop. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's hard. It's probably a bad example, but like, um, you know, like I think of that example because it's what stops violence. Like, extreme violence is when they actually see they're confronted with what they're doing, and they're, they're horrified by what they've done, and then they then actually go through the process of feeling ashamed, and then they can actually then empathize with the other side because they've also gone through the same thing, and then they can then somehow meet together. I mean, this is not the same when it's like you have one side attacking or abusing another party, or a group attacking a single person or a few people, because that's a whole different dynamic. That's a whole different dynamic. I'm sort of talking where you've got two sides that have got an equal thing. Um, but the similar thing can work in that, you know, it's holding the mirror up, let them sit with themselves, and I guess there can be healing in that. Like, for instance, you know, like, you look at all the scandals with institutions and churches and things like that. You know, like, they've had to go through the shame of that, and they've had to keep going. And if it wasn't for the good stuff that they were doing, they would have nothing to be able to continue. So, um, but that doesn't mean they didn't have to go through the shame. It took a long time for these things to get exposed. Um, like a long time, and a lot of work, and people fighting for decades. But eventually it gets to the point where they have, like we had Royal Commission here in Australia, on several things to do with institutional abuse. And not some things came out of it where there was healing, and there was sadly also a lot of pain. So it brought up a lot of pain for people, and not everyone had a positive experience. Some people came through it and they felt like they'd been re-traumatized by the whole experience. Um, in the aftermath of these royal commissions, we have these lawsuits and redress, people getting paid money for the pain that they went through. And what we've seen is that these institutions have been very adversarial in fighting to pay back any money. They're loaded with cash, but they don't want to. They don't want to admit guilt. So even though they've been forced to admit guilt and they've been publicly shamed, they still don't actually um, go through with the actual healing part, which is acknowledging. It's okay to put the money, ask people to put money in the thing, but when it's time to give the money back, they don't want to do it. And so they're perpetuating the agony by not acknowledging their shame. So that's a very sad aspect to formalized healing processes. So what happened was is you had all these lawyers that were um, people had serious claims, and then they were then being coerced into withdrawing the amount that they were asking for, and then um, it was then causing additional pain on these people who'd already been abused. So Preppy says, yeah, very comfy lighting tonight. It's nice. Yeah, thank you. I've got the candles going. Um, not a bad example. Keep going. Keep on. Sorry. Michaela says, lols, they are shameless. They are. It's sad, the stories you hear about, and that's, like, here's the thing, like, you would think it like to um promote or to spruik forgiveness and giving and acknowledgement and responsibility, and then when it comes back and then you're asked to actually take accountability for your actions, you just put it all on, sweep it all under a rug, and then pretend like nothing's happened, and then be very aggressive in fighting against it. It just shows that there's no, like, heart or substance within some of these institutions. Like, you can sort of understand why they are so stringent in giving any allowance towards admitting guilt, because if they open up that admitting guilt to bad things that had happened, they would then be flooded with endless claims, because you know acknowledgement. That's it. Says Preppy. Preppy says, I think I've created a pain. I think I may project so much unknown that I make people afraid of me. I understand what you're saying. I do the same. I've done that, and I've done that for years, where um, I've projected my agony and pain. People have seen it. Um, so often you get sympathy and or acknowledgement, understanding, but you also get people become afraid, and what's the word? People don't know how to act. Um, so it is a difficult thing. So it is, it's good to be fearless, and good to be, you can have this pain and fear inside, but it's good to like stand tall and like just walk proud and like not care and just keep going regardless of what you're facing, because then you're projecting this different aspect, even though inside you might still be in agony. So it's difficult, but it's also good to be authentic. If you're not necessarily projecting, if you're really going through these emotions, then and you're showing them, then you're showing people that's you, and it's hard to take for people, and so it does wear people down. If you're always in that state around people, then they can't handle it after a period of time, especially if they're harboring guilt. Um, the classic sort of thing is, oh, that person's a downer. They always drag me down because they're always so sad and depressed, or they're dealing with so much. I can't handle being around them, and that's sort of sad, because if you're a good strong person, you should be able to be comforting towards people. So if someone comes into your life or into your room, your space, and they're visibly disheveled or in pain or anxious, you should be there for them. You don't have to use all your energy on them. You can just like give them a little bit of attention and just acknowledge them, and just tell them that it's okay, that you're safe here, and that you can see what they're going through, and maybe encourage them that you can change things around, and enjoy. Even if you're having a tough day, you can find something to do that will make you feel a bit better, rather than the opposite of being like, oh, this person's like upset, I can't speak to them. Oh, this person's anxious, it's too much for me, I can't speak to them. Like, it doesn't take much to like give a little bit to actually turn things around for someone. So you shouldn't feel self-conscious for being authentically showing your emotions of being distressed. But the sad thing is that when you are stuck in that state, you become self-conscious, and then you self-isolate from social engagement, because you don't want to impose on others. You feel like, oh, I can't go there because I'm not feeling up to being happy and you know socializing. So I'm just going to be bringing them down. So I will avoid going to that social situation. So it's a difficult thing because it's something that everyone can do a little bit and make everything a bit better for everyone. And it also includes yourself. So don't feel so, like, if you're in that situation where you're feeling down, it's good to actually just say to someone, look, I'm having a tough day. I don't want to be being a downer and drag everyone down. So, like, just let me be a little bit down for a bit, and I'll do what I can to engage with the group, and hopefully someone will go, look, it's okay, like, we can accommodate you, and we will try and make you feel um, welcome, and you know we understand, you know rather than being like the opposite, where it's like, oh, it's dragging me down, this person's like too much, and that's where the other person is, so it's this big cycle. It's like two 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 circles, all like feeding in, and then all it takes is just like calmness, a little bit of understanding. Michaela says, no amount of money will be enough for the crimes against humanity they've committed. That's absolutely right. They're so wide reaching and have been going on for so long. Um, Even though a lot of these, you know, there's an endless money pit. That's the thing. There's the money. The money's there, but like they just won't pay out. And even if they did, it's what you're saying is so true. Is that no amount of money is enough, because we live in this place where this stuff's not meant to happen. Preppy says that is such a huge part of not only the first step of recapturing form of normal happiness. That's it. He looks me straight in the eyes. He looks me straight in the eye and admits to not knowing why I'm saying crazy things. That's difficult. That's a really difficult thing to hear someone say. Preppy says, Michaela, you're in the right spot. I'm here. The Ratus Quadratus says, same. Preppy says, I'm almost worse than someone acknowledging the pain and then just not care what the next second. I don't need attention. I just need to be honestly acknowledged. I'm such a chore to others. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, don't feel like that. But that's the problem that we have, is when we're in that state. And so we shut down, or we disengage, or avoid, and all it takes is someone else to just acknowledge it. and just say, look, it's okay, we're here for you. You know, Aratus Quadratus says, "Oh my God, I should have had this conversation many years ago. What to do? Be honest with my feelings, or being with others." Yeah, it's a difficult one, my brother. It is difficult, and I'm the same. And that's why I'm saying this stuff is because I do all this stuff myself. I have avoidant behavior because of my worry, and then I worry about how I act, and then I get negative reactions from people as well when I'm in a um, anxious or depressed state or traumatized state, and it's not nice. Loratus Quadrata says, basically my last 4 years. I'm sorry it's been like that. And it is, unfortunately, it is like that where it perpetuates for a long period of time. So, you've endured 4 years of this. Preppy says, Loratus, don't feel like you or it is a choice. We're also others, Loratus. We're here. This counts, right? Yeah, that's it. We're all here. That's the beauty of it. This is the beauty of this right now. We're all here right now having this conversation. How good is that? Like, we're actually having a conversation about really deep, painful, personal, and we're also talking about the big stuff, like big, powerful corporations and entities and their responsibilities and the guilt they have. But we're also talking about ourselves personally and like our vulnerabilities and the pain that we have in just being and doing. It's pretty powerful. And like right now, this is happening right now. Like we're right here. You guys are sitting there contributing, and I'm reading. Like we're having this conversation. How awesome is that? And I had no idea I was going to do that tonight. Like I just had this feeling that I needed to speak, and I had an idea of what I needed to speak about, and I knew that it was going to be very sensitive topics, and I got to speak about those topics. Like, this is very serious stuff I spoke about that I was fearful of talking about for a long time, but I was able to speak about it in a way that I didn't directly implicate anyone or anything. So it's not like I'm afraid someone's going to come after me for talking about these things, you know. But the actual topic of what I was talking about was that very fact that people can't talk about or get justice because they fear retribution, or whistleblowers get taken out, or they get imprisoned, or they lose their job, or they get slandered, smear campaigns. Um, People who fight for justice get stuck in years and years of like the court systems and things like that. Um, and also how this relates back on different scales. It's a very similar story that happens to people. So it could be in your workplace where you keep saying, "Oh, look, I'm sick of this happening. I'm sick of this happening. I'm being treated this way," and nothing happens. And then you go try and take it further, and then you then become the problem. This is a very common story. And so it's the same thing happens everywhere. It doesn't mean give up. It means keep going with what you're doing. Like, and I talked about how I gave up on fighting for justice myself, because I had pressure put on me, and I became paranoid, and I stopped what I was doing. And I wish I kept going, because if I actually pushed for it, it might have really forced a change, like it might have actually forced something to have happened, but like it would have cost me a lot to do so. And that's why the system's in place, where once pressure is placed on an individual, they give up. And this relates exactly to what Loratis was saying about your situation when you were put through that with the hospital system. You know, the pain that you went through, and you were like, they were saying, you were saying, look, look at this, and they were saying no, and they were pushing you aside and saying no and disregarding you. You know, you could have gone to like a lawyer and spent all this money. You could have gone like, and then still got nothing. This is the pain. This is the injustice, the world that we live in. You know, how painful is that to live with that? And it's such a painful thing because it's such a personal thing. So you're a strong person to be able to talk about that stuff tonight, my friend. So I appreciate you opening up about that. And it's very painful what you went through. Um, Michaela says, some abuse is akin to spiritual warfare. Arm yourselves accordingly. I absolutely agree with what you're saying there. And yeah, that's an awesome comment. That's so true. Like you do have to guard yourself. You have to protect yourself. You also have to be confident in yourself and just keep doing what you're doing and nourish yourself. Um, feed yourself the positiveness of like the world, art, creativity, food, music, culture. Don't give up on things. But the attacks will be from all directions, you know. Loratis says, absolutely. I know there is people there I can relate, but you never know what you need until you need it. That's another really good comment. Because yeah, we really don't know until the time happens. And then unfortunate thing is when that happens, then whatever the particular thing it is that you need might be out of reach, or it might be so difficult to actually attain, or it might be right there and you can just utilize it straight away. So I think, you know, um, being focused and aware as much as you can. So when you are in a really state of panic and crisis, um, do what you can, and that's based on the need. And so that can help you. And if something's out of reach or too difficult, then you can at least like look at what you need in the next area. and then use that because that'll keep you going. Preppy says you saved my life genuinely. Oh, that's too much, but like, thank you for saying that. This is saving my life. So it's we're all helping each other here. Such a strong place to be vulnerable. It feels scary and so amazing. I'm grateful for you. Don't read out loud. All right, I will look that up. It sounds like something to research, like a self-help or um, someone who's been through some difficult times or something like that. The writer says, imagine, Luke, when we asked for an autopsy, the hospital was trying to convince us not to do it. Yeah, that's a red flag or a sus right there. Suspect, you know. Preppy says, my first marriage was perfect the entire time until our son was kidnapped. We separated instantly, and I hastily got into a relationship that resulted in a second baby. That's like you've been through a lot there, Preppy. Hey, um, I couldn't imagine what that would be like to have your child kidnapped. And this stuff like happens. It happens so much in America. I mean, all over the world, really. But like, someone told me the statistics of children that go missing in Australia, and I couldn't believe it. The number of children that go missing every year, and I was like, I can't believe that's that high. That number, I can't believe it. Why isn't this on the news? And it's like, yeah, this is the number, and I'm like, how is this like real? But it happens, and the parents have to live with that for the rest of their life. It's really painful. And you don't know whatever happened to them. My first marriage was perfect the entire time. Oh yeah, I read that. I was told it. I was told if I reported him again, that I'd be arrested and jailed. See, that's yeah. What the hell's wrong with this planet? Says Preppy. The writer says that's so terrible, Preppy. I'm so sorry to hear that. Preppy says I still walk around and keep a daily job. I'm pretty effing good about keeping my proverbial shit together. Pain is in all the times I was told I was saying just didn't make sense. One of the messages just went missing. Second thing was is that I fell into a relationship with a pedo. That's horrible. That was after see, look, it gets worse and worse, doesn't it? You're dealing with one thing and then you're dealing with the next. Preppy says I had a baby with him. That's really traumatic. That's some serious trauma. Preppy says, yeah, I was 6 months pregnant when I found an image I could never ever erase. I cannot unsee that. Oh, look, you do well for like functioning. The fact that you can function and um, the writer says, "I'm sorry, Preppy. We are all here with you." Absolutely. Preppy says, "Never. I didn't ask for it." Yeah, that's it. Of course, you didn't ask for it. You didn't ask for your child to be kidnapped. You didn't ask for like the next partner to be like a sick person. I feel like I've lost both of my babies. That's really painful. We're here for you, like, are you able to like Preppy says, yeah, police can never do anything about it. His second wife found it and called me to apologize that she didn't listen to me. Just doesn't stop the pain, the babies, yeah. Well, I guess one thing it must be difficult with the baby that you had from the sick person. It's that child is going to grow up and be a normal person. If you can think that and be a good mother, then Michaela says, is supervised visitation for your child an option? That's a really good question. You need to keep this person away from your child, like as much, or if you can't keep them away, they need to be supervised. I have to function every day with him. He's the head of the parent teacher. Oh my gosh. He's the head of the parent teacher group at her school. Now, okay, look. Oh, this is the thing. They get in these positions of power and control, and then it makes it almost impossible to actually stop them. So Preppy says he controls us. He is the perfect man on paper. Curly says, unbelievable. I'm so sorry. He has 3 more babies now. I found suspicious pics of my own daughter on his phone. What can you do? Like there's got to be something you can do, but like you've already thought about this for years. Michaela says the well-crafted mask. Writer says, gosh, I think he should find another job. Well, he should be fired from his job. Absolutely. Like they should, like, you know, Michaela says turn him into Child Protective Services. Preppy says, and somehow I'm the bad guy. Yeah, that's the thing. They turn it around on you. Kayla says turn. Preppy says, yeah, I'm the bad guy. Question mark. Kayla says, yeah, you need Child Protective Services. Totally. There are people out there that will help. There's levels too, I think. Like, like if the base level one doesn't do anything, there's ones above that. And there's also like organizations that like will be work on making sure it holds them to account. Like public advocates, you know. Preppy says both me and his new wife have turned on him. I turned him in, reported him. So you've got two people that have actually, like two women corroborating mothers, turned him in, and the law says nothing. The law says you're wrong now. Something's got to be done. Cal says, you said you're in Vegas. There should be resources available to help you protect children. CPS are not the police. Preppy says, I'm not exaggerating at all. It's literally shot. This is literally shot. So you've tried everything, but there has to be something. So both you and the ex-wife have turned him in, and they've just refusing to do anything. I keep hearing this, that services don't do anything about within interfamily stuff. Like they step back from it all, and that's just horrible. Preppy says, I don't need attention. None of us do. I need acknowledgement. You need both, but like you don't need attention, I guess, but you need to feel safe. Everything. Yeah, exactly. Loretta says, unbelievable. Michaela says, my ex still walks free. You can only make other parents aware so they can keep their children safe. Preppy says, we are legally liable for defaming his character without proof, and they will not accept proof. That's just gaslighting from the authorities. Like, you're giving them proof and then like refusing it. Like, they should, like, there should be someone, a public prosecutor, that actually takes the authorities to court to say that they're not doing their job. You know, if they're basically turning it back on you, say there's no proof, and you're giving them proof, like. Kayla says, I'm sorry, I lived through a very similar mindfuck situation. Preppy says, thank you for being here, Michaela. Alex says, that's not what defamation is. Exactly. Like, defamation is if there's no proof and you've got proof. So it's like, that's the problem. Here's the thing though, Alex, is that people with power and money and in positions of power, they use defamation as a gaslighting thing. So they claim defamation even though they're guilty. So it's a messes with your head, because you're you can. What do you do? You've got proof, and then you can't do anything. Preppy says, "You're such a bright light in my day." Michaela says, "You're welcome." Michaela says, "Even though they have no character." Alex says, "Defamation is based on a lie. This isn't a lie." Exactly. So that's the thing. I hear what you're saying, Alex. Like, it's not, defamation is not applicable in this situation, but they're using it as an excuse. So the only way to get around that is to actually say, um, it's not acceptable, and that's where you need public prosecutors to actually take the government on, like, to go take them to court and say, you're not doing your job correctly, you're actually the ones committing a crime. And that's when they really fuck up, because they're like, if they get caught out for doing that stuff, they're then liable for covering up these heinous crimes. And so that's when they really actually quickly fix things. It takes a lot to actually get this to happen, but like, that's the only way that it works. Preppy says, "I need to start a channel for this." Yeah, you should, like, document your story. You know, somehow, like, you make yourself anonymous or something, or do it publicly. Try and find a community of people who are fellow sufferers going through the exact same thing, and that's how you can find lawyers and public prosecutors and things like that. Preppy says, "There's so many people forced to live with known monsters." It is horrible. Michaela says, "Yes, facts." It is total. It's sadly, it's so much more common than you just expect. And it's not regarded, and it's put lower down on the list of things to deal with. Preppy says, it's not defamation if someone acknowledged the truth. Exactly. Either way, says Preppy. Michaela says, "Years ago, when I first turned in my ex, looked for support, I thought there must be other mums like me, and all I found were forums for the abusers, whining about being on the offender list." That's horrible. So that there's forums where, like, the actual abusers are complaining about being, and there isn't the forums for the abused. That is full on. I thought there would be these websites for, like, you know, abused people and, like, partners, mothers, um, who are looking for support and you got the opposite. How are these websites even allowed to exist? Loratis says, unfortunately, so command. Preppy says, Michaela, we actually need a place, don't we? Absolutely. Somehow start a Preppy, start a YouTube channel. And from that, maybe you can maybe from that you can find people and then start a website. Michaela says, I was looking in 2010. There might be more available now. I certainly didn't know where to look. You'd think that you put in a Google search and it would come up with like support networks. I can't believe this. I can't believe that they have the opposite. Like you have like all these websites where where the abusers are like complaining, and you don't have all these websites for the abused looking for support. Like this is just insane. Preppy says, honestly, nothing has been valuable in the slightest since my loss. Well, you've had two losses. You lost your first child, and then now you know. I hope your child is safe now. But you obviously fear for safety. Kayla says there was support, just not for survivors. Preppy says, so funny when you say, Preppy, my daughter took my snoz over and it's her name and pic. Curly says, truly shocking. Preppy says, we are the soldiers. I'll keep this chat going. Hey, like everyone keep chatting here. Like I got to go to the toilet. We're all feeling for you, Preppy. Like we want to help you with this somehow. And Michaela's got good advice and she's been through this. There's got to be a way to get there has to be lawyers or public advocates, or there are like not-for-profit organizations for like this stuff that specialize in this stuff. You've got to find them. I don't know their names, but they're out there. Preppy says, I live a third of a mile from her father. I always have since I left him. Happy poops to you. Michaela is awesome. Yeah, she is. Guardian ad litem. Michaela says, that's the name of the lawyer that's supposed to be on my child's behalf. Yeah, look that up. There you go. And I'm sure lawyers like this would work across states. I've got to go. I'll be back in like a couple of minutes, but everyone keep chatting. We'll try and help what we can. Preppy says, babe, I'm off the only thing if I choose to create it. Yep. Kayla says, that's a role they fill. Preppy says, I've exhausted every resource in 10 years over the matter. Guardian ad litem is meant to be impartial to the parents and work for the well-being of the child. They should be open to any allegations of proof of abuse is their job. Preppy says, I'm not crazy. This fool used to used his shared time when he was less than a year old to go and maintenance a car he owned that was 2 miles away. His excuse was to have baby monitor on my phone. What? Does a baby monitor extinguish fires? Question marks. Kayla says, yes, you shouldn't have to tell a parent they cannot leave a baby alone. That's just, Kayla says, the whole helplessness thing sort of implies that someone should stick around. Preppy says, Miss Holiday, there isn't a place, there really isn't a place for this yet, is there? Preppy says, well, we can't be the only ones. Michaela says, I'm not even the only one in my small town. Michaela says, that man is also not in prison. Preppy says, lol, surprise, welcome back, Luke. Surprise, Luke, welcome back. I'm glad we're all here talking, you know. I'll keep this chat going as long as you people want to keep talking, because this is very important. Preppy says, Michaela, can you DM me? We should make a space, definitely. It's difficult to do that. You can't do that on Instagram, or not on can't do that on YouTube. So you got to find each other somehow. If you want, I've got my email address on my YouTube, and you can both email me, and I can then email you both, and then you can speak that way. Horatus Quadratus says, what a terrible person. Yeah, absolutely. This guy should be in prison. Michaela says, I have to go. Thank you for a great chat. Thank you for being here, Michaela. And we all appreciate your input tonight, Michaela. Thank you. I'm sure Preppy is really appreciative. If you two can somehow get in contact with each other, email me, both of you, and then I'll share your email addresses. And then that way you can speak to each other. Preppy says, what was the best part about yesterday for you? That's a good question. I slept. For me, I slept. And I needed to sleep. So I slept. And Baratus says, see you next time, Michaela. Thanks for being here, Michaela. Your input tonight's been really special, and we all appreciate it. Baratus says, Michaela, sorry. Yeah, we do feel for you as well, Michaela, like what you've been through. And Preppy says, "Thank you, Michaela. I hope that you can get in contact with each other. So do that. Both of you email me, and then you'll get each other's email addresses that way." Yeah, Preppy says Michaela was the gem of the night. That's beautiful. See, this is what it's all about. We're all here for each other, you know. I'm it's really I'm I'm not smiling, Preppy. I'm almost crying at the moment. Um, maybe my heart's smiling because it's feeling warmth and um, I'm learning to feel my emotions and read my emotions. And I was on the verge of tears just a few moments ago, and that's gone. I'm feeling calmness right now, but I'm feeling a sorrow and a sadness. But it's also I feel a sense of peace, that there is going to be good good things and coming for everyone, that everyone will have resolutions to things. So I do feel I do feel something really nice. It's relief. That's exactly it. It's called relief. I feel that, and it's a calmness, and it's I need to breathe. I stopped breathing for a minute there, and I stopped breathing regularly. That's it. We know we aren't wrong for having feelings. That's it. We got to listen to our feelings and feel it, read our body, and listen to our internal state. That's the point. Exactly, Preppy. You know, whenever you feel lost or you don't know what's going on, stop for a second and then just be 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 still and listen to yourself and feel your emotions and listen to your body. Feel your body and your thoughts and your emotion. Excuse me, and then it'll help you. You know, and it'll you go through that change like I went through that change. Preppy says, "Shit, I catch myself not breathing too." Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what happened then. I just stopped, and then it's very important to keep natural breathing going in and out, and like when it's irregular or like shallow breathing is not good for you. It'll keep you in that state of like being in that state of fear or fright, and it's not good. Your body's going to be releasing all these hormones, and like your organs will be shutting down, and you'll be diverting blood from all the different areas, and it all makes everything more difficult. So, like, when you catch yourself not breathing, like, just stop and regather and just take some deep breaths. They don't have to be massive deep breaths, but just take regular breaths. And this really helps if you're panicking as well. Like, just keep it regular and then slow it down if you can. So holding your breath in for longer and then breathing out slower. It's amazing how much you can change your state. And I'd feel much calmer now. I've just done that. And that was only like 30 seconds of doing that. Creppy says sometimes everyone else is wrong. I think that happens a lot. Loratus Quadratus says that happens often to me as well. Yep. The other thing that happens when I get in a panic state, I'll breathe fast and shallow. That's when you hyperventilate as well. So it's another time when you need to, or just calm it down and give yourself that space and time to just. It distracts you as well. So if everything's going on and like you just, you've realized that you're in a state, just breathe. Try and breathe not too slow, but just slower. And slow it down as you do it, but you don't have to go real slow. Sometimes take deep breaths, but you don't have to like take deep breaths all the time. There's no right or wrong with any of this, it's all about getting a natural rhythm again because we breathe naturally. And when we get out of kilter, like we're not breathing naturally. And it's all interconnected with everything. Preppy says there's a pattern to break the breathing, right? Yeah, absolutely. That's what I find is let it happen naturally. So I'll give an example. You're you've realized you're in a really panicked or upset state, distressed. You really distressed, and that's when you go. That first you recognize how upset you are. That's when you have to go. Okay, I have to like listen to my breathing and how I'm breathing, and you might be taking big breaths, or you might be taking shallow breaths. like, or you might not be breathing at all. You might be just there. So it could be any of those things. So as soon as you listen to or read your body, and then you just go, okay, just let it go back natural again. So the for me, the big thing is it's there's no magical thing about it. It's all as simple as slowing it down a little bit and letting it go natural. And so if you're standing up, maybe sit down. If it's really bad, lie on the ground for a bit. I've done that. I've gone, like, I'm just need to lie down, and I lie down and I just calm myself down. You can't do that in a shopping center. If you're having a panic attack in a shopping center, sit on the ground. Don't worry, people will see that you're distressed and they won't judge you. They'll know that there's something going on, and they might come up to you and ask you if you're all right. But as long as you're just, but if you're at home, or if you're somewhere, like anywhere, like sitting down is a big thing. And if you can't sit on a chair, sit on the ground. Um, if you're standing up, lean against something. You know, prop yourself up against something to take that. So you're not, like, because when you get in that state, you're off balance. So you want to try and center yourself, or again, it doesn't have to be like some magical breathing technique. There's lots of breathing practices, and I've learnt breathing practices, but like what I've found is just breathing, as let it happen naturally. Take a few deep breaths every so often, but just let it be natural. And you can breathe, um, it, you can have a rhythm to it. That's getting lots of oxygen in, but you don't want to breathe any faster than that. So you want to be a little bit slower than that, but then that's your natural breathing. You know, when you're relaxed, you're so just let it happen naturally, and listen to it as it's doing it, and try to slow it down a little bit. Don't try and just abruptly slow it down. If you're breathing really fast, and you try and stop breathing really fast and take deep breaths, that's too much of a change. Just let it gradually happen. Loratus Quadratus says, something that helps me is to observe things around me with the breathing. Common things without value and meaning help me get out of my mind state. That's a really great thing to do. So while you're breathing, like, you just look around and observe. You know, if you're inside a room, look at what you're seeing in the room. Oh, look, there's a bookshelf. There's a computer, there's some candles. I'm looking at the flame. There's some CDs. It's a distraction from what you're stuck in. And you don't have to say it out loud. You just think it, and you can do this in public where no one knows what you're doing, so you can do this if you're in public and not feel like people are going to look at you or anything. Probably says that's hard to change. That's really hard to change. It is really hard to change, but like practice it. It does take practice, and once you do it a few times, like suddenly you'll have um, a trauma response or a panic attack type thing, and you'll call on this thing that you've been practicing, and it'll work for you, and you'll be so thankful. You'll be like, oh my gosh, this really works. So like what Loratis just said, while you're breathing, look around. If you're outside, look at the trees, look at the sky, listen to the sound of the wind. You hear a car driving past, listen to the sound of the car. You might hear someone with a lawnmower off in the distance. Listen to the lawnmower, and then you hear car screeching off in the other direction. So just keep changing your focus of your attention, but do it long enough, and it'll distract you from where you were. It really does work, but it's hard to do. It takes practice. Preppy says there are mental levels to it, and the hardest one is that no one realizes how serious it is. Yeah, that's a big one. So that's breaking out of that is very difficult. But I really, it's hard to explain that. When you're in a really traumatized state, it's like, it's not that you're resisting to break out of that traumatized state. You're not ready to, because you're trying to process something and it's still happening. So the thought of trying to relax yourself is, you forget about it, or you don't even think about it. And if you think about it, you give up on it. You think, I'm not even going to try that because it's too much right now. I'm too busy thinking about this stuff. And that's where having those distractions help. And that's also where practicing it helps. So you've got to practice it when you're not in the traumatized state, so that when you are traumatized, you're ready for it. And that's when you remember, oh, well, that's right. I'm pushing a shopping trolley. Squeeze the handle of the shopping trolley. Um, you're standing up, holding this shopping trolley. Don't stamp your feet, but push your feet into the ground. Put your put pressure on your feet, stand up straight a little bit, look around, get distracted by all the things around you, like, um, if you're driving a car, pull over to the side of the road and just turn the engine off. Listen to some music for a while or something, The sometimes if you're in a calm state, that can be a really good thing. Just keep driving. If you're if you, because that you're distracted because you have to stay focused on the driving, and eventually it's such a difficult thing because it's overwhelming. It's so overwhelming, and it's so painful. And like I was saying, you don't want to stop. Like when you're halfway through you're trying to process something, so you don't want to stop it. You want to like, you can't think about it, but you want to keep thinking about it. But it is better to actually break from it for a bit and then come back to it, because you can always come back to thinking about things. So if it's causing you distress, reduce the distress, and then when you get to go back to it, um, you've had a bit of time, and the writer says, yeah, if you're in a social environment, maintain the calm, ask to one person to excuse them. You will leave them for a moment, the room. You need to hide or tell everyone, and draw attention to you. And that's exactly it. That's a really good thing to do. So what you're doing there is um, you're being proactive. You're acknowledging your situation. You're participating and cooperating with your people around you. You're being vulnerable and honest and saying, I need to leave the room, but you do it quickly, and then you leave the room, you get out of there, and then you go find somewhere quiet, and that's when you sit down and just take a deep breath and look around and think about that. You know, that gives you time to stay. If you're in that state, that gives you 5-10 minutes to like really be like thinking about this thing, but you're away from the people, and you can think about it, and then you can go back to them. So you can either leave the room and reset, or you can leave the room and really focus on being angry or upset and let that wear itself out. So it works really well, that method. Preppy says still here, just breathing with you. That's awesome. I'm going to start doing breathing videos too, Preppy. I'm going to start doing like breathing streams where I just sit here breathing, because I've learned mindfulness and breathing stuff, so I want to do it, and it's such a natural thing, and we can do it together. And so breathing in and out is so crucial with our nervous system. It is in like, it connects both sides of our nervous system, the calm side and the active side. So keeping a balance to it gets us in stasis. And also, you can use other techniques where you pause for a certain time, hold, like breathe in for a certain time, pause for a certain time, breathe out for a certain time. You can really go further with it. But I'm a big fan of just breathing naturally and just letting it happen. But a big thing is, yeah, breathing full breaths. It's all about balance in the middle. Writer says, imagine I have a panic attacks every time I read my message with my horrible English. You got really good English, mate. You're writing good English, so I don't know. Like, I can understand, and you live in an English speaking country, so like you do well. But I can understand how difficult it is for you to actually. I can understand how it would cause. Um, The writer says, I'm kidding, of course, this is serious stuff. It's good to be able to joke, it is good. At the end of the day, learning to trick your mind first and then help your mind slash psychic healing. That's really it, isn't it? That's it. And it's not tricking your mind in a bad sense. It's not like you're playing pranks or tricking it in a bad way. You're just tricking it out of its because it's going down a bad path. It's like going like this, and you're just saying like, no, just go smooth it out. And it doesn't know, like it doesn't realize until you give it a reason to. The Raiders quote writer says you couldn't have said it better, Luke. Thank you, brother. I'm gonna like I'm gonna I'm learning more and more, and I just want to keep sharing. And it's all stuff that works for me. So if it works for me, I'm sure it's going to work for you. And um, I really want to start doing this breathing streaming. Just breathe, and like people can join and breathe together, and we can relax. It's like a meditation, but we don't have to speak. It doesn't have to be formal or anything. But I can introduce like other aspects to it where we Loretta says that'd be great. I'll look forward to it. It's something that's going to happen in the future. Loretta says when you're in a trauma response state, remember a simple list. Are you tired? Are you hungry? Something hurts or is annoying. Something have triggered you. Learning to have compassion for yourself. That's awesome. That's exactly it. That's reading your stuff, your state, your self state, and often, they're really good things to actually start with. So if you are in that state and you say, look, are you tired? Because it could be that you're tired and you've exacerbated the situation. Are you hungry? You could be hungry and your body's just out of whack. Something hurts or is annoying. You know, it could be something that has happened recently in your last half an hour or so, that's put you in that state, and gives you a chance to think about what it could have been. And then something has triggered you, and then you just go, yes, then you can go, okay, something really did happen. Or not. Like it could be that you've worked it out. So it's the checklist. It's going through the things. And learning to have compassion for yourself is a really big thing. The writer says, don't need to hide or draw attention, sorry. No, that's it. Preppy says, I'm embarrassed for others to know how I feel. Thank you so much for your time. Look, you've been very what's the word? You've been very proactive. You've been very strong. You've been vulnerable with what you've expressed tonight and shared with us. And we appreciate it, and we're here with you and for you. So like, we want to help you, and I really hope that you know you can get connected with Michaela and email, and she can help you with talking to lawyers and things like that. Loretta says, because of my job, I can't be constant, but I would love to participate. Well, the beauty of you could watch the replays of the live streams, and I'll do live streams at all different times of the day. So, um, there'll be times when you can join when it's live. So that'll work. So it doesn't have to be, and anytime you can be there will be awesome. So that'll be great. Yeah, Loretta says that's amazing, awesome. See, this put a smile on my face. So Preppy said before, are you smiling? And I wasn't smiling at that stage, and I'm smiling now. It took a while to actually um, it's good to talk about all this stuff. I'm starting to actually get better at sitting better and better posture and stuff like that. That's something I'm working on. I need to exercise more. That's coming next week. So, but Preppy, look, don't be embarrassed at all. We really appreciate you being here tonight. So, Curly says more staff training. Yes, that's what I'll be doing next week. Yeah, totally. I will be doing that, and I'll start doing it at home too. I won't just wait till I go out in the bush. I'll go in the backyard and do it, because I used to be really I used to be able to spin it around and be fluent with it, And because I didn't do it for a year, I feel so uncoordinated. So I really look forward to actually getting back to it and doing it, because it is a big part of healing. And that's what I've been reading in the trauma books. Is it's a really slow movement coordination stuff is really good for you. And it can be anything, but the beauty of the staff is it's a moving thing. So that's why swimming is good, because you're doing this, and but staff training, I love it. Thank you for bringing that up, Curly. I want to get back into it. I really do. And I'm going to make a new staff. I love the staff I got, but I want to make a new one. Preppy says thank you for you. Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing tonight, Preppy. Know that we're all here for you tonight. Curly says that's wonderful. I did martial arts and found it therapeutic. Exactly. It's such a powerful thing, isn't it, Curly? I've never studied formally. I looked at doing, a couple of different styles, and my problem with it was getting to the actual doing the training, like timing, and because you have to like set aside time, and that's why I like the staff stuff, is I can just do it whenever. But it's not the same as being taught by someone and being in a class and going through them. It's very, very therapeutic. Preppy says, looking for your next cast. I'm so in need of human. What's that? Sorry. I'm so in need of some human ass sleep. See you next time. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. You matter. Yes, you. Thank you. Loretta's quote says, I just got into the woods and I run under the rain whilst screaming, Odin. Awesome. So it's raining. Like Loretta's is like listening to this while he's like going for a run in the woods. How awesome is that? I'm joking, but all true apart, the Odin. That's it. So you're in the bush and it's raining. Hope your earphones aren't getting wet. That's something that's bad. That's not good when that happens. Yeah, exactly. I only just got some Bluetooth headphones, and I usually use the old school plug-in headphones. I like them. They can get wet and it doesn't matter. But I guess some of those Bluetooth stuff is all right. They can get wet. Loretta says, haha. No, right, not right now, just in general for movement. Yeah, true. I get what you're saying. Well, look, it's probably a good time to wind up the chat. Like, we've all had a really great time tonight, like as far as it's been therapeutic for us all, and we've talked about some really serious, heavy stuff, and Preppy says, I thought I was going to sleep before the last comment. Well, we are winding up. We'll give it another minute or two. Curly says, thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here, Curly. You're a legend. And thanks for inspiring me to get back to the staff practice. I'll do it next week. Maybe even tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll try and do it every day. That's what I'll do. I'll do it every day. I'll do like 15, 20 minutes a day. Preppy says, now I've got to run to accomplish with my earbuds in. Yeah, that's it. We're going to finish the stream in the next like 30 seconds or 60 seconds. We're all saying goodbye to each other tonight now. So Loritis Quadrata says, thank you, Luke, for listening to and much love to every big heart to everyone to share. I will go. Loritis says, lots of love, Preppy. So and Curly says thank you to everyone. So I really appreciate everyone tonight. Like I got to speak about some really heavy stuff, and I got to speak about it in a way that I felt like safe about talking about it because I wasn't being direct about anything. So, but then everyone opened up and spoke about some very personal stuff, and I appreciate that. And that's what I really feel honored to be able to have this space where people can do that. So, and yeah, I look forward to the next stream. Preppy says, looking forward to all of you again. Yeah, absolutely. We do too. And we're thinking of you, Preppy. You know, we're going to do what we can to help you. But just being there for you is enough, you know, for starters. So, and also just being there with us, you know, like this, it's such a great thing for us to share this space together. Preppy says, thank you, Loratus Quadrata. So I'm going to sleep well tonight, you know. Preppy says, thank you, Curly. Normally I'm awake through the night, and tonight's it's I've got like a night off, and it is 4:24 in the morning, so really I have been up all night. We are already doing everything. That's it. That's a really good one. We are doing it. Curly says, sleep well all. Thank you, Curly. We will. It's going to be really nice. It's going to be a very comfortable sleep. We've had a really therapeutic, like, opening chat tonight where we were there for each other, and Preppy says, snugs for y'all, big hugs, and Bugs. So Bugs is big hugs. That's awesome. Much love to everyone. Until we see each other again.